we at?
Go
here?
live. Go live.
I'm trying.
Or live on Facebook. Oh, meeting is not live
Wait.
on Facebook.
Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Are you still able to see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to make me host and then maybe I can get this done?
Maybe so.
Are you
It
recording?
looks like we're up here. I see us.
I'll request permission to record. That way I know it's recorded.
There we go. It looks like it says we're live.
Okay, but you have people trying to get in.
Yeah, I don't know. Do I? How is this?
I don't know. Is it just us?
It's supposed to be the Zoom meeting and going live. Yeah, live on Facebook.
Okay, so let me go over to Facebook and see if we're actually live. And that would be on your page, right?
That should be on my page. Yeah.
The Patrick King Horsemanship?
Yes. Yeah, it looks like we are live.
Oh yeah.
And we've got plenty of people watching me fumble and try to figure out this technology.
Yeah, well, you know, look, Zoom is a learning curve, okay?
I'm finding
Yes,
this out.
people are telling us we're live. So.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay, hi, I'm Wendy Murdoch.
Okay.
I'm Patrick King's guest here today on this live Zoom meeting on Facebook. And since he's still struggling to get his act together, I'm just going to take over.
There we go. That's perfect.
I think we're just going to talk about the fact that we can't get going. And I am recording this so that, oh wait, I thought I was. Did you turn?
Talking about horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for what is now episode number 42 of Talking About Horses. And today I'm pleased to be joined again by my good friend, Wendy Murdoch. And I have Brad peeking in there. That's awesome. Wendy Murdoch, an internationally recognized equestrian author, instructor, and clinician for over 23 years, teaches her students how to do
over 30 years.
Over 30 years. Well, you need to update that. Goodness.
Oh, it is updated on my website.
Oh, goodness. Teaches her students how to do what great riders do naturally. And she's also the inventor of the SureFoot Equine Stability Program, a unique way to calm horses while allowing them to discover and change their habits, posture, attitude, and relationship with you. Wendy, thank you so much again for joining us on Talking About Horses, and thanks for putting up with my technical snafus.
No problem. You got to get your feet wet, and it's better, you know, like I can help you with stuff before you get to your other guests where they can't help.
Right, exactly. That's perfect. That's perfect. So I'm super excited to have you join me for this. Of course, my first Zoom live deal here, but also just excited to have you on the first podcast that I've got going on for 2020. And you've been on here with us, I'm thinking at least 3 other times in the past, if I remember that right.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. So awesome to have you joining me again.
And we've talked about all kinds of things in the past. Did you have a topic for today, or are we just going to ramble?
No way. This is just going to be us talking.
Oh, cool. Can we talk about how we met?
Oh my gosh. I suppose we can. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I've been doing a little history on all my Zoom meetings. So
I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, let's go into that. I remember meeting you at an expo that I had helped to put together. Oh.
You weren't married yet.
No, I was not. This was a while ago. This was quite a long time ago.
Like you weren't married, and divorced, and re-engaged.
Right. The whole shebang, the circle of life. What was that? 2004?
Well, that, like, if you know how old's your daughter? She's 9. And then how long after you got married did you have her?
2-3 years, maybe.
So we're talking a lot. Yeah, probably about 2004. That's about right.
Yeah, I think so.
He was a young whippersnapper. I think he was 22. Very full of himself and thought he knew everything.
Right, right. And every day since then, I've eaten crow.
Okay. And we were doing an expo together. It was in Pennsylvania, I think near Washington, PA.
It was, yeah, Greensburg. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's where we met. And then I went back the next year, I think, and did it again, and you were still there.
Yes.
And Holly, we both met Holly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Holly's
Holly
last name?
was part of that group that helped to put that on, and she'd ridden with you a few times. Yeah, absolutely.
So then we kind of like went that way, and then kind of like we'd cross paths. Like you'd come and ride with me, or I'd see you somewhere, and it just kind of wandered in and out in the beginning, kind of rather randomly.
Right.
I suppose.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I don't know when we things started. Well, let's see. Probably about you were going to come and do an intensive with me, and then we had that really awful winter, and that didn't work out. And but after that, we started seeing more. So started seeing more of each other. Yeah.
Started seeing more of each other. That's right. Yeah. Well, 16 years. That makes this my longest standing relationship.
So, and you know, it's really, Patrick, I have to say that one of the things that's been most interesting is to watch your growth. Like when I met you, you were very much into the natural horsemanship, and pretty much way over there. And now you have, very few people that I've met that are in the horsemanship are willing to let go of their ego and go and explore other avenues and other areas. And, you know, Lester Buckley is the other one that comes to mind. He went to Germany and got his a license in dressage and jumping.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah. But other than that, you should ask him about that. Other than that, very few have been willing to cross the lines and put on a pair of breeches. And you have been willing to do that, and really, to your credit and to your benefit and to the benefit of your students, you have gone out and looked into other things. And I commend you highly for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
That's it's been an adventure for sure. You know, it's been quite a journey in all of this. So it's great, and it's pretty cool to be able to share those memories and insights, and you know, and I love the fact that, you know, I can kind of every now and then call you up and pick your brain or send you a message or that sort of thing. It's been really great.
I tell him I'm a spinster aunt.
That's it. That's it. My Aunt Wendy. Exactly. I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
So go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so you were off in Portugal and Spain again this winter, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And you went to Spain this time. That was new.
I did. Yeah, Spain was new. So we went to Portugal with the Valensas, just outside of Lisbon in Vilafranca. We had 3 groups of riders join us for that, and then went to Spain and had the opportunity to ride at the Royal Andalusian School in Jerez, which was pretty awesome. It had been a dream of mine to visit the 4 schools. Now I've visited 2 and actually ridden as a student at one of them. The 4 schools, we talk about the 4 big schools, you know, of classical riding.
Tell everybody who they are.
So we're looking at the Spanish riding school in Vienna, Austria, that I've yet to visit. We're looking at the Cadre Noir in France, the Portuguese Academy in Lisbon, and then the Royal Andalusian School in Spain in Jerez de la Frontera. So I've been fortunate enough to visit the school in Portugal and now the school in Spain, and it was pretty awesome to ride there. Pretty intense to have 2 lessons a day at the school in Spain. It was a lot of work. It was hard work.
So if there was one thing that you took away from the school in Spain as opposed to the other areas that you've explored, what was that? What's like the one kind of take home?
Oh gosh, you know, for me, the biggest thing I would say that I got out of the school in Spain was that I was really, really drilled on my timing for the tempi changes. I was getting 4s, 3s, and 1s just fine, but the 2 tempis, man, I was having a bugger of a time with those on the one horse I was riding. And so learned a lot from him about the balance and the preparation and the presentation and the really sanding into those tempi changes and counting. Turns out I don't know how to count to 2.
You know, I mean, when I teach somebody how to do flying changes, I always make them do it on the ground, and I watch how they do their timing, and you learn so much by watching somebody canter on the ground, period. If you ever want to know about somebody and how they canter and they're on a horse, just watch them canter on the ground, So the two legs of the person are the back legs of the horse. But I mean, that's how I figure out riders' timing, what their balance is, what their canter's like, whether they've got suspension. And by clarifying the canter on the ground for the person, you instantly see that improvement in the canter on the horse, especially like the transitions trot to canter. So that's one of my favorite things. When people say I have trouble with canter, I just take them off the horse and say, show me. And so I can't tell you how many times people don't have two leads. And then they wonder why their horse doesn't have two leads.
I was just going to ask you if you found a correlation in that. Yeah. So
absolutely, absolutely. And same with the flying changes, that you'll see that people really don't understand what the balance is for a flying change. And the tendency, everybody tends to get a little nervous, a little tight, a little forward. And so then they miss them. And you really have to stay in a very relaxed place when you're doing your tempies, because the minute you get tense and forward, you put the horse on the forehand, and then you're going to not have your tempies. But you know, it's we get anticipatory on changes. Canter and flying changes are so fascinating, because for some reason we think that they're like exotic or really special or really difficult. And that concept going into the flying change is what makes it hard, you know? And so, you know, that's where it's, if you can ever just sit on a horse that does easy changes. I went with you to Portugal, not this year, but the year before. And I rode, what was this, Tenor?
Yeah.
It was a blast. And apparently everybody has trouble keeping him in a lead because he always wants to change, but I was able to keep him in the lead and then I think I did threes. I don't know if I did twos. But it's just not anticipating it and really maintaining position. And that's the problem, is people start to anticipate, they tense up a little bit, they get a little forward, they tighten the hips, and then boom, the horse is like either taking over like Tenor or missing their changes.
Absolutely. And I found, you know, one of my coaches, Julio Mendoza, he likes to say, or at least he said to me a couple times, that the challenges that people have with their flying changes are over-collecting, over-correcting, and overthinking. And I found the overthinking part was really where I was getting it, you know, the overthinking and the drilling into the timing, and just not letting myself feel it in the two tempies. Like I said, the ones, the threes, the fours, totally fine. But the twos
are harder.
Yeah, I was too in my head. And as soon as I just let myself get out of my head, man, it got so much easier.
Yeah. And so that's the thing is, you know, that anticipation, and that's the problem with so much of what we do. You know, I do this really interesting exercise with the SureFoot pads for people. You've been through it. I set up a balance trail and I line up all the pads and I put them in different orders and I make people walk over them. And then I start to push on them and test their balance. And after a while, I don't even have to touch them. All I have to do is and they're already anticipating being pushed and defending themselves. And so they're already gone. I've already got them, because then I just come from the other direction. And it's the same thing, whether we're jumping or flying changes, anywhere where we have sort of anticipation because things are happening faster, like faster meaning in the moment of faster, not speed faster, but things happen more rapidly in timing. That the tendency is to start tightening, and that's the very moment you need to let go and be more relaxed. And, you know, when you're learning, not worry so much about making a mistake. You know, if you get a three, okay, you got a three, you didn't get a two. The horse isn't going to know that, oh, I should have been doing twos. But we get so hard on ourselves, and you know, and then that's where we get in trouble. But it's kind of life. It's kind of a human condition.
Riders get hard on ourselves? No way. We're like the ultimate control freaks, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, I hired a business coach, and he's like, you really need other people to do, because I mean, I've got a lot of things going on. I've run 3 different companies by myself, basically. And he's like, you need to let go of stuff. And I'm like, it's really hard to do. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I think the punchline to the whole joke is Wendy hired a business coach.
Yeah, I know.
Only because I know you well enough to know how that would play out. So.
Yeah. It's but I mean, I was almost about to hire somebody to work for me, and then of course this happened, and so that's put things off. But in the meantime, you know, people, I've been home, what, 3 weeks now, I think, and I have worked harder than these 3 weeks,
Right.
and I'm still not caught up. So that's what
Isn't
he's
it
talking
amazing?
about is somebody to help me do a lot of these jobs. And literally, I'm still not caught up, but that's okay because I am spending a lot of time in my garden, which I really do appreciate. And
Awesome. Yeah, I've
hoping,
seen the photos.
yeah,
That looks fantastic. That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
I'll
awesome.
keep putting
I
up
was just
flowers
sharing
because they're
with you
still
the other
coming
day,
up.
it's
So.
amazing how we can have this time off and still be busier than ever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But I don't know about you, but I'm super fortunate because I live in a little town called Washington with 130 people in a county of 7,000, 50 miles from DC, where we're out in the country. And so, I can go out in my garden and not have to not see anybody. I didn't see a lot of people before. And so that's not unusual for me being home. But there's a lot of people that I really feel for because they can't get out of the house.
Right.
They might have children now that are home the whole time and those kids can't go out to play. And so I'm sure that this is a huge hardship and people are losing their jobs. So, I'm not trying to downplay that in any way. I'm not working. I don't know about you, but I'm spending a time doing Zoom meetings and having great time doing that. But, I don't know when I'll be able to go back to teaching riding because I put my hands on my students and I just don't know when that's going to be possible. So anyway, just so you know, I'm also thinking about alternate ways to do this, and I'm sure you are too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a question of figuring out the technology and making sure it works when you're near the horses, because that's the problem is so many of us, when we're at the barn, don't have high-speed internet, and when we're home, we're not at our horse. So I've got some plans, but I'm not ready to launch them yet because I've got some other things I got to do first.
Cool. Well, that's always exciting when you say you've got plans. So I can't wait to hear about that as it shapes up. That's awesome. Cool. Very cool. So we've got if we can digress here, we've got a question that came in from Ellen in Illinois. Ellen is a friend and student of mine. I've known Ellen for a few years now. She says she wants to know if we can have you share with everybody your life with horses, starting with childhood. I think that's super interesting because knowing a little bit about that story, I feel like that really segues into how and why you do what you do, as a profession.
Yeah, sure.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So apparently I had a horse on my first birthday cake, and my mom was living with me a few years, and then she went into assisted living and passed last January. But in the process of cleaning out all my mom's stuff, I have all these negatives that I scanned into my computer. And I found photographs from birthday parties where we went to the local stables and would ride the ponies and get led around on the ponies. So, it's been in my blood since I was born, even though I was not born into a horse family. I'm actually from Stamford, Connecticut, and that's a suburb of New York City. And we lived on a half an acre. And so, below the parkway, as people say. And so that wasn't a possibility to own a horse at that time. Well, not yet. But when I was 11, my mom gave me riding lessons weekly with a man named Mr. Davies, who was north of the parkway. And he was an old Welshman that had lesson horses. And I found a picture of me, and I'll dig them out again and post them. But one of the horses that I rode was named Honey. And I found a photo of me on Honey bareback, just giving her a great big hug. And then another of the horses I rode was Nugget. And so I rode there, I'm not sure for how long, but at some point I wanted to kind of move up a little bit. So I then moved over to Round Hill Stables in Greenwich, Connecticut. And a man named Teddy Wall, who was, he would take kids to the garden, and he would come into the arena with his bullwhip. And if you weren't doing what he said, he would crack that bullwhip. And I swore I was never going to let myself cry, because other girls would cry, and I was never going to let myself cry, even though Ivory Tower, this huge gray horse that had been to the garden, one day we were making the corner and he fell over and fell on me. I didn't get hurt, but I didn't cry. So, you don't cry. And so then he would take me out of my group lesson, which is all I could afford, and have me jump over these big old jumps on Barrister, was this hun horse. He was huge. And I won my first blue ribbon on Barrister at the horse show that we had at Round Hill. What happened next was that I was working at the Stanford Museum and Nature Center as a volunteer, which had domestic and wild animals. And I'd go and I'd help feed the animals and clean the cages. And then across the street, there was a woman who had a horse that she bought for her sons, but they didn't want to ride. So I went over and I started exercising him, and his name was Texas. And so at some point, she decided that she wanted to sell Texas. And so I told her I would buy him. And he was $500, including tack. And I actually found the bill of sale in my mom's papers too. And I only had $450 in my bank account because I delivered newspapers, which is how I raised the money. Okay. So I paid her $450 and then paid her the other $50 later. And so I came home and I told my mother that I bought a horse and I was 14. And my mother's first question was, where are we going to keep him? Well, at the time, my parents were divorced and my dad lived a quarter mile up the road on Vine Road in Stamford, and he had a log cabin with a 2-car garage up at the back of the property. It was a half acre. And so he converted the garage into a barn, and I moved Texas to my dad's house. I would ride in the school field across the street, and I would hack him on I would ride an hour on High Ridge Road to get to trails, and I would literally ride his shoes off of the feet. So my farrier finally started putting borium on permanently just to keep the shoes from wearing out. My friends and I used to go on the weekends and we'd ride. And one day we went over into Greenwich, where they used to have the Professional Horsemen's Association horse shows. I think it was Mr. Oshult's property, but I'm not sure now. And we were jumping, and there was a stationary jump, and Texas hit the jump, and I fell off, and I landed on my face and broke 3 teeth and blacked out. And so I made my friend I remember waking up a little, I made her find the broken tooth, and she had to get me back on my horse and ride me a half an hour to a telephone, at which point she called my mother, who had to drive the half an hour or whatever to where we were, and then take me to the Greenwich Hospital, where they extricated the nerve from my front tooth in the hospital.
Wow.
Wow. I also probably I damaged the collarbone where it goes into the shoulder. I still have a bump there. And so basically I had black eyes, and we went to the rodeo. This is the funny part. We went to the rodeo, and because they couldn't tell how old I was, they sold me beer.
I love it. Those are important memories.
Yeah, so anyway, I recovered from that, and I was in the Stanford Trailblazers 4-H club, and Kathy Campbell was my instructor during this whole process of having Texas and having him at home. And so I recovered from my injuries, and I was riding again, and I qualified twice through 4-H for Eastern States Exposition, the big show, the state show where everybody went, and I placed reserve in the equitation. I had a little kink in my wrist on Texas, but the stable management, I've forgotten what they used to call it. I did really, really well. So I'm a little OCD about things. I would go through and pick out every piece of poop by hand from the shaving so they couldn't ding me on anything. Because I'm a little neurotic. Yeah. No, I don't do that anymore.
That's good. That's good. Some things we can let go of.
Yeah. So then I went 2 years to Stanford, UConn and Stanford, and I realized that I was working part-time. So working part-time, going to college and having a horse wasn't working. So I loaned Texas to Phil Ake at Sunnyside. He was at Sunnyside and in Bedford, New York, and I loaned him there. And so he stayed there, but he was really funny because he was a smarty, and he was in a garage that had been converted into a barn, and they had the metal grates, and he knew how to take his stall door off, and then he'd go and he'd take the stall door off of his friend's stalls, and he'd turn his friends loose and leave the ones he didn't like in the barn, and they would go out and graze, and they'd find him out there grazing away and very happy with his friends. So they had to start like locking him in a little bit tighter.
Right. Oh man, high security.
So I finished undergrad at University of New Hampshire. I did my last 2 years there, rode in the horse program, and then went to work at Dartmouth Medical School. I was working for Gibbons G. Cornwell III. He was an oncologist and he was studying amyloidosis, and I was his sole research assistant. But I realized the winters were way too hard in New Hampshire. It snowed a foot April like 15th, and I was like so done with New Hampshire snow. And so I basically went down to Virginia, went to the University of Virginia, got myself a job in the biology department as a research assistant, and moved to Charlottesville. So that was the first time I came into Virginia. And I worked, I think, 2 years in the biology department, met Margie Young's good friend of mine now, and she had a barn, and so I stayed on the farm for a while and worked with horses. And it, always kept coming back to the fact that I was happiest around horses. So I didn't want to live at the end of a pitchfork, and I decided that I would go back to school, and I had really liked reproductive physiology when I was in undergrad. So I looked at the two schools that had a repro program for equines. One was the University of Kentucky and the other was Colorado State. And I applied to both. I never heard from Colorado State. UK accepted me. And so then I went out to UK and got my my master's degree in equine reproductive physiology. So that was 81 or 2 to 86. And it was while I was there, I was again managing an event barn, and we brought a bunch of horses up from Georgia, and one of them was known to rear, but you want to be a tough event rider, so you get on. And the horse reared up and hit me in the face. And the second time he flipped over, and then he rolled over me and punched my femur through my hip socket. So 15 seconds changed my life completely. Yeah. I no longer was going to be a tough event rider. They scraped me up, took me to the hospital, did surgery. I have 3 pins in my left. Well, the first time I have 3 pins in my left hip socket. I got 2 more now. But I mean, and that's the thing is there are blessings in everything. And so I knew the minute that happened that I was on the wrong path, and this was a correction. This was to get me on the right path. And while it was a really horrific experience and it was super painful and I had to have surgery and I was, in the hospital for 3 weeks and still recovering, and that's over 30 years ago, it was also an event that redirected my life, and none of what's happened since then would have happened if I didn't have that accident. None of it. I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't take people on horseback to Safari to Kenya. I wouldn't have created SureFoot. I wouldn't be a riding instructor. I mean, because that wasn't my direction.
Right.
I don't know where I would have been, but I know I wouldn't be where I am now. And so, there's and that's the thing right now is with this pandemic, and we're all stuck inside and social distancing, and the world is in such a state of not only upheaval, but unknown. It can be really, really scary for people. But I've been through this more than once in terms of personally, and also, like in 87, I was working just outside New York City in a restaurant when the stock market crashed and people were jumping out of buildings, and 9/11 and, that 2008 and now this one. And what I do know is that we will recover. Feldenkrais said that health is the ability to recover. And has always stuck with me that, if you think about a horse that gets an illness, if he's healthy, he'll recover. And if he's not healthy, he won't recover. The same with a plant, right? If it's a healthy plant and something's happened to it, I knocked it off the windowsill, I can stuff it back in the pod and put the dirt back around and give it some water and it'll recover. And so that's what we're looking at, is that health is the ability to recover. And so that's what happened is I recovered from that accident. In the process, I found out about Linda Tellington-Jones, and somebody gave me a Tellington-Jones newsletter. I met Linda a year after my accident. I went to a team clinic with Ellie Jensen in Wisconsin. Ellie organized it, and Linda was there. And I was this really straight scientist, so now I'm like all these other things, like homeopathics and, all this stuff. And so I went back to Kentucky and started studying and looking at different things. I quit my doctoral degree, which was going to be in biomechanics. James Rooney was one of my advisors for my undergrad, for my master's degree. But I quit that and I started doing the teamwork with Linda and trained extensively from 85 to 92 or 3. Met Sally Swift in 86, apprenticed with her in 92. Went to Australia with Robin Hood in 87, lived there for a year. Been to Africa in 99 and 98 with somebody I met at a team clinic, and now she's passed, but I own the safari company, which is Horsing Around International. It's just been an amazing journey. People look at me and like, I never had any desire to go to Africa, but now I've been there 8 times and, over 10 years. Actually, Kenya 8 times, total to Africa is 10 times, and so it's just a question of like looking at what's around and following that, and never really, following your heart. I think that's one of the most important things, is that this is a time we can reflect and figure out what our heart says to us and follow our heart. And if we follow our heart, it will work out. I really believe in that.
I love that. That's an awesome message. And that whole path, like you said, you described that whole path, and it's all because you were going to be a tough event rider and climb on that horse.
Yeah.
That 15 seconds, like you said, that 15 seconds.
And the same thing with SureFoot. It was 15 seconds. It was an experiment to put a pad under a horse's foot. I timed it for 15 seconds. He walked off sound. I don't know if you've ever heard of an astrological event called Saturn Return. Nope. Saturn Return is when Saturn comes back into your chart, and it happens every 27 years. And they say that when Saturn Return happens, it's your opportunity to make a big change in your life. Well, I was 27 when the horse flipped on me, and I was almost 54, right? Is that right? Yeah, 54 when I found SureFoot. And They both, completely changed my life direction in 15 seconds. I mean, it's
15 seconds. Yeah, wow.
27 years and 15 seconds.
Yeah, that's a Saturn return for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool. How very cool. Now, you mentioned that you're still recovering from the pelvis injury. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, because I had to rehab myself, and in that process I found out all about holistic medicine and all different types of holistic medicine. But probably about 7 years ago, I started having pain. And so if you think of this as the hip joint, here, right? And here's the greater trochanter. The screws were putting the socket back together, but they had to cut the greater trochanter and retract it to get into the hip socket. And so when they put it back, they wired it back together, right? And I have a huge incision. It's called a Mercedes incision. It's a big Y. But right here on the greater trochanter, I formed a bone spur. So 2 years, 2 years ago, January, I finally went and had surgery, and they went back in, they cleaned up the scar, they took out the bursa, they moved vastus, they took out the bone spur, and then they found out that glute medius, which is the middle of your 3 glute muscles, was only attached by 25% of the tendon. So they put 2 more screws into, so I have 5 pins, 2 more screws in, and then they stitched up into the tendon and they pulled it back down. Well, that's major surgery.
And, right. That's not a little thing.
Right. And my orthopedic surgeon actually was surprised that I was actually doing well, because apparently this is not necessarily a very successful operation.
Oh.
And 4 weeks after surgery, because I thought it was just a bone spur, I had booked a retreat in Costa Rica. So 4 weeks after surgery, I was in Costa Rica teaching on a cane, in a chair, and taking a lot of drugs.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
Um, and to this day, they're like, wow, you did a great job. They couldn't, it was like, yeah, well.
The question is, do you remember any of it with all those drugs you were on?
I do. I remember the pain. I remember going up the hill because the house, the finca was up at the top of this dirt hill in Cali. I was with Cali King,
Okay.
right? And Effortless Rider Retreat. And we would have to go up that hill twice a day. And I would try to hold myself off the seat because it was this little short boxed four-wheel, and it would be so bouncy. And
Oh, sure. Yeah. The suspension would, yeah. Okay.
It was
Oh,
a killer. It was a killer. And the bed was like concrete. So it was just, kind of reminded me of the original, it's just a grind. You just got to do it. You got to get through it. Right.
There you go.
But I did find out that if I used my SureFoot physio pad, I could stand on my left leg. I found that out because I was cleaning all my pads just before I left for Costa Rica. And I was like, I wonder what would happen if I stood on this. So I put it on the floor and I stepped on it, and I could stand on my left leg for 15 seconds without holding on, which I absolutely could not do without the pad. I absolutely could not stand on that leg without holding on, without the pad. And the minute I dropped that pad on the floor, I could. So I have personal experience understanding how these pads, well, not understanding it, but experiencing how the pads work. So I took my physio pad with me to Costa Rica, and I stood on that every single day when I would go.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So, that's a really big surgery, and I had a lot of pain from that. I flew in June of last year, or whenever it was, I flew to do a clinic. When I got off the plane, I was absolutely crippled. I was crippled. And for a year and a half, I had heel pain in my right heel that would keep me awake at night. And probably what happened is I damaged a nerve from my back, and it was radiating down into my leg, into my heel. But finally, and actually it was really interesting because so the first, January 2 years ago, I went down and we did the retreat. We went back last January, and I was able to do the yoga with Heidi Isom. Not Heidi Isom, that's our dairy lady nearby. Heidi Blackman, too many Heidis. And then this year, when I was doing the yoga every morning with her, the heel pain got better and better and better. And it's basically 99% gone.
Oh, fantastic.
Really, yeah. So, I just feel like our bodies are always changing and evolving, just like our horses. And we just have to keep moving. That's the bottom line, is we just have to keep moving.
Right. That's something I've learned from you. I've heard you say so many times, movement is life. And that's, I keep that in mind all the time.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's an awesome story and a fantastic, I think, segue into the SureFoot pads. I know we've got a lot of folks that are interested in hearing about them. I'm super excited. I finally made the investment. I know you were probably thinking, damn it, it's been long enough.
We talked about it before, and your car was really full.
Exactly. Yeah. And now this opportunity to sit still has made me, or has allowed me to commit to, having that full set of the pads. And I've been playing with them every day. Mostly at this point as a discovery, or an experiment to see how each horse responds to them, to see what's going on. But can you tell us, for the folks that are out there watching and listening, what are the SureFoot pads? Tell us about them.
Can I share my screen?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I'm not sure how to do that, but yeah.
I as long as I have the permissions from you, I can do it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So let me see if you've given me permission to share my screen. It doesn't look like I don't have permission, so I'm going to hit screen share.
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. So SureFoot pads are a variety of foam pads. I hope I don't, hang on, I'm just going to pause it while I scroll because I don't want to make anybody nauseous.
Okay.
And I have a bunch of files and I'm not sure. Oh, here, this is probably the one I want. Let's see, resume share. So the pads come in a variety of densities, hard slant, firm slant, medium, soft, and then 2 physio pads, which are a slightly different design. They're 10 by 12 by 2, and they're different hardnesses. So this pad here is the hard pad, and I had a horse stand on it. And one of the nice things about the hard pad is now we get to see the impression of the horse's foot. And you can see my pointer, right?
I'm seeing just the
Orange.
intro to SureFoot screen.
Oh,
Maybe.
you're not seeing an orange pad?
No.
Oh, resume share. There we go. Now you're seeing an orange pad.
Ah, there we are. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, resume share. Okay, so this is the hard pad, and you can see how there's higher pressures here at the toe.
Mhm.
And if I slide this over a little bit, you can see how this foot's a whole lot more even,
Ah, yeah.
right? So when the horse stands on the pads, what we see is all the signs of relaxation: licking, chewing, sighing, breathing, neck lowering, that kind of thing. And this here, let's see if I can make this bigger. Wait, let's just do, this is a before and after. This was early on, and this horse had Lyme disease. So after being treated for Lyme disease, she was traveling with her neck twisted like this at the trot. And we did one 40-minute session of SureFoot, which is a session is where you're pretty much just doing the pads, and that you can do it unmounted or mounted. If the horse is at all anxious or nervous, you obviously start unmounted. You need a helper for mounted, obviously, too. But you put one foot on a pad, you let them stand there, you let them walk off. They walk off when they want, within reason. If they stay there too long, I ask them to walk off because it's like starting a new exercise program. But then we progressed to 2 feet. And then with this horse, we actually progressed to a pad under all 4 feet. And I needed her for a video the next day. And this is the change that we had from one session. And she never looked back. She made that change, and it stuck.
Wow.
So
is that the horse that's in the instructional DVD?
yeah, the old one.
Oh, the old one. Okay. Yep. I thought I remembered seeing the head tilting. Yeah.
Yep. And I have that chapter up on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
So people can
Fantastic.
see it. So here, this is just a horse on a firm pad. So it's hard, firm is green. And you can see her, this was an anxious, nervous horse. And what you can see is this really soft face, neck lowering, breathing and sighing. I just had Sharon Wilsey on for a Zoom meeting this morning, which I have to post up on the YouTube channel. But what was so cool is that Sharon can describe what the horse is saying by all the facial muzzle movements and that sort of thing. It's really fun. So check out that YouTube channel. You might recognize this horse. This is Snip. Do you know Snip?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Snip. All right.
Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So this was his first session, and he was a super hyper little Pasofino that had probably been injured in the field when he was young and then sent to a bad trainer and was really anxious and nervous. But we used SureFoot with him, and he yawned like crazy, and she's still using the pads with him. She's still.
Yeah, I remember the last time I had worked with her. She sets them in the arena, and he'll walk onto them on his own now.
Oh, how cool!
Last time I had seen her, so she would ride around and warm up, and then ride to the pads, and then ride off, and then ride to the pads, and he would put himself on the pads.
Oh, that's super! That's really super. Yeah. So this is a horse. He's standing on what's called the half physio pad. So the difference between a half and a full is just the size. It's a lower profile pad. It's 1.5 inches with, you can see the 2 different colors there, 1/2 inch of medium and 1 inch of hard. A lot of the farriers now are using this pad because if you make the horse more comfortable, you're going to be safer. So here's just a little video. This is down in Costa Rica with a horse that had been tope trained, which they talk about dancing horses, but it's not the kindest training in the world. Right. And so he had a new home, super people. And he didn't even stand on the pad when he did this. Like, he had not actually kept his foot on the pad. And he looks at the pad and yawns like crazy. They'd never seen him yawn in the 2 years that they'd owned him.
No kidding.
Nope.
Interesting.
So I'll just play that again because this is one of my favorite little videos.
He just touched it with his toe, is that right?
That's it. Yeah. And he's the only horse I've ever had that literally only touched it with his toe and then had a huge release. Most horses, they can stand on it for a little while and have that kind of release, but he just touched it. This is down at the World Equestrian Games. It was at Tryon. I sent down 6 half physio pads and a full set of pads, and none of them came back. James Gilchrist was the head farrier there, and this horse was from Sweden or Denmark. And I can't remember what the problem was, but the horse was coming to him and was in big trouble. He didn't even take the wrappers off the pads, and he just stuck the horse on the pad. And he said it bought him enough time to get the horse the treatment that he needed, which was really fantastic. So we think of this pad as kind of like the emergency pad, you know.
Okay, sure.
You had, I mean, you can use it for other reasons, but if you got one sitting around and your horse is colicking, or you know, something's happened, we've had many reports of horses that have stopped colicking using this pad. Now, I always tell people, call your vet, but then go out and offer your horse a pad, any pad, whatever pad you've got. This is the full physio. It's twice the size of the half physio, obviously. Here's just another picture of a horse standing on a half physio.
Okay.
And here's yep, that horse standing on the, so you can see you can get 2 feet on the full physio, whereas the half physio is pretty much just 1 foot.
Right.
So here, oh, this is the picture I was looking for. So this is the kind of palette. Orange is hard, pink is hard slant, green is firm, yellow is firm slant, purple is medium, blue is soft, and then there's the physio in half and full, and then the pods are what I call advanced, because the horse has to be really receptive to the pads before you target the foot on pods.
Okay, because there's a lot of instability on the pods. Yeah,
and a lot less surface area.
Oh, sure, right. Okay.
Gotta be able to aim. So this is the horse standing on the hard pads, and I'll just zoom it in a little bit. And you can see that it's going to give slowly to heat and pressure, and it's going to give where there's all areas of high pressure. And you can see how this horse has 2 different shaped feet.
Yes.
So one of the things the SureFoot pads do is act like a magnifying glass. There's a lot of stuff that we don't notice, but when you put them on a pad, things become more obvious. And that was like with this horse, the 2 different shaped feet. The other thing that becomes really obvious is how they're loading. And that's when you look at a picture of how a horse is stood on a pad.
Okay.
So again, this is a hard pad, and this was the shape of the foot when we started. And then this is the shape of the 2 feet at the end of an hour. And what you can see is that that foot that was so kind of uneven and unevenly loaded, and look at this really tight little corner here. And then afterward, look at how symmetrical that is.
Yeah.
Isn't that
And
crazy?
that's after one hour session.
Yeah, that actually happened before the end of the hour, but at the end of the lesson, I stuck the horse back on the pads to get this picture.
Wow. Super
Yeah.
interesting.
So Ida Hammer, if you've never heard of Ida Hammer, she's a barefoot trimmer, whole horse trimming. She went down to Dr. Deb Taylor's, who's Forma-hoof down in Alabama. And they had a horse with a reiner with the back feet, club feet, which obviously weren't born that way. So they did something really interesting is they put the horse on the half physio pad, and it gave to the pressure, right? And then they decided to put it on top of the x-ray block and take an x-ray. So here you can see the level of the pad, right? This is the surface level. And here you can see how much pressure there is at the toe, so much that you see how it's like actually deformed it a bit down here. It's pushed the medium layer down.
Yeah.
But here you see very little pressure into the heel, like there's almost no weight there.
Right.
But as a result of putting the horse on the physio pad and taking this x-ray, they changed how they trimmed the horse. And when they finished with the Forma-hoof, he walked off and was so happy. So it gave them a lot of information, which then gave them a different perspective to really make that horse comfortable. And so that's just a really cool thing that you can do with the physio pads, is just let them stand on it and see what they do and where their weight is.
Right, where they're loading and where they're going with it. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So this was a twin foal in New Zealand.
Okay.
And he was just a few days old, and he couldn't get up on his own. And the owner, the other twin was fine and was with the mare. And this one, she was going down and feeding it every couple of hours, and she'd have to get it up. So we said, well, let's go and stick it on pads. And so we just scattered them about and kind of guided him over the pads. And the next day he was jumping and bucking around.
No kidding. Oh, wow.
Yep. And they've since sent me pictures of him and his legs, which you can't quite see how crooked they are, but they were so crooked. His legs are straight now.
No kidding.
Really amazing.
Wow.
So here's a Clyde cross on the hard slants. They're pink. You can see they're on an angle, and this kind of yawning, licking, chewing, sighing, very typical of the things that we see on pads. Here's another horse. This was a dressage horse, also in New Zealand, who tended to be kind of anxious. She's on firm in front and hard slant behind. I tend to start with hard pads when I don't know a horse. Here's hard slants. They're just orange color. It doesn't matter the size of the horse or the weight of the horse in terms of the pads. That's not how you choose. You choose by how much instability the horse needs. Like if they're nervous and anxious, this is just a half physio pad. Nervous, anxious horses, I go harder. Unstable horses, weak horses, you go hard. Calm horses, you can start with firm. That's kind of the rule of thumb, but you know, you never know what a horse is going to like until you offer it to them. And this was a horse I started with the half physio, and now he's on the full physio in front and the hard slants behind. And you can see how much he's swaying there.
Yeah.
And swaying's not unusual at all. I've seen horses sway just on one foot, one pad. So we don't 100% understand the swaying, but what I tend to see is your weak horses will sway a lot in the beginning and then sway less and less as their stabilizers kick in.
Okay.
Your tense, rigid horses will not sway much, and then they'll start to sway more and more as they let down and explore. So this was a very tight horse, and you can see he's swaying more. And then we've had, you know, so you can play with it either way.
Okay. Okay. So looking at these, looking at what the horses are doing, you know, the yawning, the letting down, all these signs of relaxation, and we're talking about the difference in the loading and the difference in the way that the feet are coming in contact with the pads. What is it? I know people ask me this all the time.
Yeah.
What is it that the pads are doing? What's going on?
So this is Bob. We worked with Bob over 3 days. This is Bob before, and he couldn't canter on his right lead in the before. After the first session, he never missed it. So, you know, what you have to realize is that all that horse has to hold himself up are those 4 little feet. And horses have habits just like people. So, you know, he raced for, I think, 8 years. And then he came out of a trailer and flipped over and broke his withers. I think it was out of a trailer. Anyway, I know he broke his withers before I saw him. And so when you have pain, injuries, habits, poor shoeing, poor dental care, any kind of insult, just think of like if you take a nice round ball and then every time you have an insult, you kind of hammer a little corner, you know, a little edge in, and pretty soon you have this gnarly ball. Right. And so it's only operating from this lumpy thing because that's all it can do, because it's had all these insults. Maybe, you know, and it doesn't mean that it was caused by a person. I mean, a horse can get kicked in a field. A horse can fall down. You know, you watch horses play and they fall down. One year we had a lot of ice and there were a lot of injured horses. So life happens just like it happens to people. And so now you have this dented ball that's not round and it won't roll. Well, for whatever reason, it seems like SureFoot comes along and it just wipes the slate clean and reboots the system and restores it to its original structure, its original design.
Okay.
And that's here with Bob. I mean, this is how he was cantering before, and this is in 3 sessions. And Bob is just getting better and better. We get reports from Bob. She's not using pads right now. She hasn't really since last summer, but he's still getting better and better and better because we kicked the system into a different spiral. And so, you know, Bob is one of our just absolute success stories. You don't always have control of everything. And this horse is down in Costa Rica. And if you look at those feet, they're really, really awful. Right. But, you know, we needed more horses for the retreat. And so the company that we work with leased out some extra horses, and Oreo was one of the horses. And we thought the farrier was going to come and redo his feet. And instead the farrier just came and tightened the clinches.
Ooh.
You know, when you're in different countries, as you know, Patrick, we don't have the same kind of care level that we have available here in the United States.
Mhm, mhm.
So Oreo was really grumpy. And when I asked him to do anything, like if he was crowding me and I'd ask him to step back, he'd want to bite my head off, and he was really grumpy. So I had an opportunity to do a SureFoot demo, and I picked him. And as you can see, we're in a round pen, and we didn't have any halter on him the whole time. And I just started with the pads. And at this point I stacked him. He's on a hard pad on the bottom, which is the nice sort of base for stacking, and then a firm slant on the top. And he yawned like crazy. But the thing that was the most interesting is that afterward, Oreo was so much more cooperative. Like, he realized that I offered him something that felt good. And while I couldn't control the thing that was really needing to be changed, which was his feet, he recognized that we were actually trying to do something for him. And he totally changed how he responded to me from one session, just one session.
Wow. Wow.
And then we see other things, like this horse is on the pads, and look at this fascial wrinkle. Isn't that cool?
Oh, super interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And then let's see, is it which way? This way. And here it had fascial wrinkles. You can see it's on the soft pad. Look at all these fascial wrinkles that showed up. That was wild.
Wow.
And then this is from Ida Hammer. This is a stifle, and I'm just going to drop the sound out and play this. Look at that.
Oh,
so
wow.
the head is to the right, right?
Yeah.
The tail's to the left. Look at that muscle activation and change. Isn't that
That's
cool?
incredible. Wow. And
So
that's
I'm going to play this slower so that you can see
session on
it.
the pad.
Yeah, I think he's on a physio pad, but watch how that bulges,
Yeah.
right? And then it goes away, and then it's going to
Wow.
bulge again. So that's why I say, you know, you want to keep your sessions short at first, because this is like starting a whole new exercise program.
Yeah,
for a
that's
horse.
a lot of specific muscle activation right there.
Yeah. This is a thoroughbred off the track, just standing on a pair of firm pads. The thoroughbreds really, really appreciate SureFoot. They really. This is medium. Medium is purple with hard slants behind. So you can mix and match pads once you've been working with the horse. I always start with 1 foot and 1 pad, and then kind of check out all the feet before I start adding.
Okay.
And really it's listening to the horse. The horses will tell you what they like and when the session's over. So I get that question a lot, is how do I know the session's over? The horses just don't want it anymore. You know, they'll step off, they'll kick it out of the way. But if they really are enjoying it, they'll stay there.
Okay. And like you said, up to a certain point, you'll let them stay there as long as they want, but there are times when you'll pull them off.
Yeah, because, you know, watching that stifle work, if I see a lot of work going, I'm going to keep it short, because it's thinking about, you know, if you start a new exercise program and you're out there for an hour and the next day you're crippled because you did
right. Yeah, you might like the exercise, but that doesn't mean more is better.
Correct. And so on my Facebook page, SureFoot Equine, I've been putting up videos, the short videos of like which pad to choose, how to get started, which foot. And so people can go to my YouTube channel, Murdoch Method or SureFoot Equine, and look on my Facebook page and join the fans of SureFoot if you're curious, because people put up case histories all the time.
Oh, perfect.
So here's the soft pad. It's the squishiest, and you can see that she's really sinking into it on this foot. She was injured in her right knee, so she's not putting as much weight there. This is just a little video of watching a horse from behind. He's on firm slants. And so you see all kinds of swaying. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'll just play that a little slower so you can see that. Yep. And he swings right.
Yeah. Look at him go.
Yep.
Super interesting.
Adjust herself a little bit because she's feeling that.
So I feel like that's a great segue right there. We had Kelly sent a message actually before the broadcast asking that she has a horse with hind end issues. And when we're talking about hind end issues, what can she expect progress to look like? And I feel like that's maybe a little bit of a vague question because we don't know what the issue is with the hind end just based off this question. But I guess for any horse specifically, what are we looking at when we're talking about progress?
So, you know, the first thing is that, this is a fun video. I'm just going to let this play. This is a little Mustang that was in the 90-day Mustang makeover down in Florida, and she could not, the horse was unable to canter under saddle for sure.
Okay.
Okay. And so this is I think day 3. I started in the round pen with her and we did short sessions, 10, 15 minutes. And then the last day she rode her, and I'll just let that play. So you can see the riders also standing on pads. So, you know, when you have a problem, I always suggest that, you know, it's recommended that you have your vet look at your horse, because SureFoot is not going to solve a problem. In other words, if you have an acute injury or, you know, something physically wrong, SureFoot's not going to solve that. It may decompensate the horse enough that it becomes way more obvious. But typically, so many things are habits. Like, you know, if you've ever had an injury, say you twisted your ankle, and you can see how see that little nervousness. That's the thing you have to be aware of, is see that ear cock and kind of unsure. You've always got to watch out for those signs and not put the horse in a position where they're feeling trapped, because this horse was going in and out of relaxation and anxiety. But you know, most of what we're dealing with are habits, and tension is the enemy with horses. So anything we can do to help the horse feel more relaxed. And you see how she comes back down and checks out the pad, and look at the eye blinking. So she was on the pad in a nice tranquil state. Then she kind of just noticed what she was doing, got worried, stepped off. But now look at that little tail swish and the check out the pad. It's like it's processing through her body at this point. I have to have Sharon read this video. So horses that are anxious are not going to recover as well. They're not going, this is just a demo. Let's see. Like Bob, for instance, he had very strong habits about his movement. And so if you're dealing with any kind of a habit, SureFoot's great. And if you're dealing in rehab, we have a lot of veterinarians now using SureFoot in their rehab prescription. And so that's where, you know, if your vet knows about SureFoot, and more vets do know about SureFoot now, they're literally writing prescriptions on how to use the pads.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Like twice now from UF, Florida, I've had people contact me with very specific instructions on how to use the pads in their rehab program. So it can be an adjunct, it can be something that you're working with. And one of the things about an injury, and I always tell people, is you got the other 3 legs working harder. So if you can use the pads with the other 3 legs, then you're giving them comfort and support while that leg is healing. So that's always a good idea to keep in mind. That's just a mixed and matched pad set there. What's this? Oh, this is at a vet. This is at a vet clinic. I went down and I did a whole, you know, showed them how to use SureFoot in their program. And he's always recommending that people use SureFoot pads. So, you know, most of the horses I'm dealing with are rideable, because my day job is teaching riding. And I never start a horse on pads if I see any of those anxious signs. I always take the rider off. And I talk about how to approach horses that are nervous. And I'm going to be doing more Zoom meetings that talk about specifics like that. But you can see this totally relaxed face. Then something caught her attention. She just looked over. You can see how I've stacked her, double stacked. These are actually hard pads. They're yellow, but that was the initial batch. And then she looks down and checks it out, right? And look at the sway. And then she steps back, right? And she's like, wow, that was really cool, right? So you can see that this facial response stepping off the pads is very different from that little Mustang.
Yes, right.
And so that's just good to keep in mind. But anytime you want relaxation, you know, you want this kind of idea. So tension is the enemy, relaxation is the key, because horses can go from this looking relaxed state to ramped up in less than a minute. I mean, well, actually like seconds. Their heart rate can jump up rapidly. Let me go over here and I'll talk about Chance for a minute. So this is Chance. His name is Chance because it was his last chance, and he wouldn't stand still. So she brought him to me, and this is a Pasofino, and it's hard to believe that this horse would not stand still, but that's, you know, he was super anxious. And this is day 3 of a 3-day clinic. We started with 1 pad. He's on hard in front and firm slants behind. But you can see how he's like totally experimenting with his balance, totally relaxed about it. In the background, we've got the team body wraps going with some pads. This horse had a leg injury. You can see the wrap on its leg, and just really little gentle body work there going. But you can watch Chance and see how much he sways, and he's exploring his balance over those 4 pads and just really like totally, checking it out.
I hope his rider doesn't get easily seasick.
Yeah, I always ask them.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that I've tried to describe the sensation of the SureFoot pads for the horses, and maybe it's not the best way, but it seems to me to be the best way that I can explain when people are asking me, is that, similar to if you're walking on a trampoline, you have to kind of get your bearings, or one of those inflatable bounce houses. And then when you get back on solid ground, your body feels a little different. You've got to get your land legs back again. Would you say that that's similar in action to what's happening with the horses and the way that it's affecting the proprioception?
I think it's similar, but the difference is that the horse doesn't have a complex thought pattern, right?
Okay, sure.
So they clearly feel, but they clearly feel, and they're movement-based creatures. So what this horse is doing is he's really experimenting and feeling out that balance. And yes, when they go back to the ground, if you're sitting on them, you can feel them really think about how their foot meets the ground. But what they do that people don't do is that they're totally okay with going back to the old place. It's like they go back and forth to figure out the difference and which one's easier. And then when they figure out which one's easier, that's it. That's when you get this kind of change in one session, because they're designed to seek ease. We are too, but we override it. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, I can't do that"? It's like, what do you mean you can't do that? You just did it.
Right, exactly.
And horses are much simpler in their thoughts, in that they'll, if they find comfort, they're going to go for comfort.
You're going to go for it. Yeah.
And
sure.
let me see. I don't want to make it. There's Bob again before, and this is on day 2. This is how much change we saw from day 1 to day 2. I have tons of video, and this is awesome. This is really cool. So this is Ida Hammer. She's a barefoot trimmer, as I said, and this was a horse with so much arthritis, but they brought him into the arena and just, as you can see, no halter, and just offered him the full physio pad. So if you're a barefoot trimmer or somebody that has a horse that's difficult to trim or to shoe because he loses, he's uncomfortable, this can make the difference to the horse and the people. Because if the horse is uncomfortable, everybody's at risk.
Sure, right.
So if you can make that horse more comfortable, then everybody's safer.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. Isn't that cool?
That's super interesting. So, and now talking about the farrier, we had a question come in also from Simone. Simone's a veterinarian. She's curious about the use of SureFoot pads in horses with collateral ligament issues and or poor hoof balance.
So what I always tell people is, like with collateral ligament issues, that's a veterinary thing. So she's a vet, so she can obviously diagnose and that sort of thing. I can't diagnose. And I always, with that kind of thing, the first thing I do is I support the other legs. And then when the vet gives permission, I start with the hard pad, because the hard pad is not gonna, I'll put up a picture of the hard pad again. It's not gonna have any lateral give. It's going to give to heat and pressure, right? So it's just going to give to heat and pressure, and it's not going to have lateral give. So you don't have to worry about the horse like struggling to keep his balance.
Okay.
And so this is where what I tell people is, when the vet gives you permission to start with the injured leg, start with the hard pad, because what we have to do there is get the horse starting to use the leg again and reset the proprioceptors. And so you start with this one, and what it does, as best I can figure, is that it normalizes the pressures in the foot, because that's what we saw. Here's this foot before, and here's this same foot right here after, and it's totally changed the load. Right. So that's what I would do. And then I like hard slants a lot. I use them heel high. Typically I use them under the front feet and under the back feet. That would be the other thing that I would suggest. to experiment. But that's when you have tendon and ligament injuries, I always tell people, talk to your vet and then, use the hard pad. And then once that horse is improved and they've checked it out, then you go to firm. So firm's green. You can see this horse here is just chosen to kind of step off the back of it a little bit. Here's another horse on firm, but we start to have lateral give. You can see how much more it deforms.
Yes.
Then
right.
I go to firm, and then a lot of times I kind of jump over and go to soft. And this is a horse that we saw this horse earlier. But here he is on firm pads behind, and I can't zoom in, but just watch how much this horse sways behind.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. Yeah.
Right. And he actually, if you look closely, I have a close-up video somewhere, he'll start to twist this pad a little bit.
I was just noticing that. Yeah, the right hind or left hind, I guess the white foot.
Yep.
Especially, you can see a lot of rotation in there.
Yep. And I'll just kind of slow that down a little bit. Right. So you can see that there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, like shorter sessions. So the softer the pad, the more instability. The only time that I go to the soft pads, this is soft pads fairly quickly, is like a laminitic horse, a horse that's really sore footed. You give them soft and it's like giving them bedroom slippers, right?
Oh, okay.
But we're not talking soft tissue injuries. We're talking foot pain.
Okay.
Right.
Now, what about soreness in the rest of the body? So somebody had asked a question on here as I'm scrolling through. Diane wants to know, does it help with poor top line and sore backs?
What I'm going to say is yes, it can, because if your horse has a habit of poor use, then using the pads to help it reestablish proprioceptors and develop thoracic sling strength. So let's see if I have. Oh, this is just an older horse. And so I'll just let that play while I'm kind of looking. But what we see is muscle development. So the postural muscles, especially the little tiny muscles, that when you see that movement, you're working those little tiny muscles, and it can definitely help. Now, obviously, if you haven't taken away the cause, SureFoot is not going to do that. SureFoot's going to maybe make it more obvious what's going on, but it's not going to hurt the horse, but it's not going to take away, like if there's an underlying problem that has not been addressed. But many times what I find with SureFoot is it leads us to finding what really is happening, like, because it's kind of like a magnifying glass. You start
it lets you really see what's going on.
That's right. So this horse here, I got to tell you the story of this horse. And this is a bizarre story, and it's true. Her stepfather stole 22 horses and took them across state lines from Tennessee to Alabama, and then ran this horse into a fence and cut her upper arm down to the bone. The scar goes from here to here, and then abandoned her. And this woman went and found the horse and brought her home. And it took over a year for the wound to close and to heal. But afterward, she was, and I have a whole series of pictures. She lost all her top line. She lost all her muscling. She hardly moved. And then I came and I did one session of SureFoot with her. And at the end, I didn't see a lot of change in her movement. So I was like, well, I don't know that really made a difference. Okay. But the woman then told me that was the first time the horse, see this bright spot here? These are doors on the sides. There's a door on either side. It was the first time that horse went past those side doors and didn't explode. And she didn't explode at all the whole session. And so then I went back a month later, and they didn't do any pads in between. And this horse had a neck. She had muscling in her top line. And so, yes, and she had muscling in her top line, and she would look like a completely different horse. She was moving completely different. We did another session, and it was amazing. She was super high-low in her feet. I'm going to stop my screen share for a minute and see if I can find those pictures. Super high-low, and then got more and more even. And it was just amazing. I've forgotten, like I see so many horses that I can't keep track of them all.
Right. That's super
interesting.
See if
I can find some video of her. So yeah, here's video of her. Let's see if that's the first session. So I'm just gonna randomly pick a video. I haven't looked at it in ages.
This will be fun. We're exploring together.
Oh, I guess it's downloading. Okay. I'm going to drop the sound out. I think this is still the first session. Oh, yeah. And you see how she's standing. Oops, I'll move that. She's standing on both feet on one pad. And these are the initial batch of pads were all yellow topped, long story, but now they come in colors. So I'm not exactly sure what densities those are, but you can see she drops her neck, licks and chews, big size. Yep. Right, sways, shifts her balance, doesn't leave.
So that left shoulder had the injury to it. What sort of consolation did you have for that leg? Like, did you stack the pad, or did you use the pads differently? Did you use different density on the pads?
I started with hard, and then but you see how she's walking. So this is the first day, the first session, and this was improvement. Okay, this was big improvement. And you see she didn't explode at the door.
Right.
Right. And then I'll find the second day, the second session. But you can see how she's just moving so stabby and short, right? But she was cheery, like ears up and tail swishing.
Happy to go, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting.
Okay, so now let's see if I can find.
So if you've got a horse, something like that, and you've got, well, like I'll talk specifically about a horse that we have in the barn right now that I've been experimenting with the pads with. Super excited to get to experiment with them. She had, I don't know what she had in her history as far as some sort of injury or anything like that. She had one foot that was kind of clubby. She had, through the series of events, she had a farrier do some, what I would call some radical stuff to her feet, and one foot is just completely jacked. And she's now going through, we won't say corrective shoeing, I think I would call it correct shoeing. So she's getting the foot more balanced out, but she's got specifically her left shoulder does all the stretching. She doesn't put her head down to eat unless that left front foot is reaching forward, kind of like Bambi, basically, really reaching so that she can get down there. And the right leg is short in all of her movement, like muscle tension short, like she's not reaching, extending it properly. With something like that, would you want to put more instability, so a softer pad or stacking pads under the foot that's taking all of the load, or under the weaker foot?
So that's a really good question. Let me just show you a little bit about this horse, and then I'll talk to you about how I work with horses that have limb differential or apparent limb differential or injuries to one limb that then makes it shorter. Let me just see if this is the trot. So this is the second time I saw this horse. You can tell because she's in a green shirt, but this is the difference. Remember the trot we saw before? Look at the reach and the neck coming down.
We've got, what I'm seeing is just a still screen at this.
Oh, okay, wait, resume share. There we go.
There we go, yep.
Okay, now we'll see this trot.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I need to do side by side, but I don't think I can with this computer just yet, but I should do some side by side. Let me just mark it.
Super interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but she could let her neck down and look at that trotting past the door.
Right.
So what I did with her, because she was super uneven. I'll just take a little, here I've just still got 4 pads.
Okay.
What I do is I put the horse in the pattern that they're going in. In other words,
in the pattern that they're going in.
So
okay.
if say they act like their right front is shorter.
Okay.
I'm going to pause my screen for a second and find an absolute example of this that I just had not long ago. So if they act like the right front is shorter, I start with one pad and just get them used to the pads. Okay, that's the given.
Okay.
You always just familiarize the horse with the pads by just doing one foot at a time. Okay. And then I stack, oh, come on, where are those pictures? Oh, wait, it's after that. Hang on. Before that, after that. Oh, I got to go over here. I double stack the leg that acts like it's shorter. In other words, I put the horse into the pattern that they're already in.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
So more stability on the leg that feels unstable to them anyway.
Well, the thing is, if I come along and yell at you to do something different, and this is what you've been doing, and you don't even know what you're doing, are you going to want to cooperate?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So what I do is I make it obvious. It's like, did you know you're doing that? Let me show you. Let me help you, and we'll take over the work, right? I'll put the pads underneath there to take over the work of what you're already doing. Oh, that horse, I showed that too, but that other horse was so good. Hang on. And then I come back and I say, and let me show you what that feels like on the other side. So I've started with one pad, gone all the way around, made sure everything's cool. I might do one pad under each front foot if we're talking about front feet, okay? And then I come along and say, how about I put you in your pattern by putting two pads underneath, oh, it must have been January. Two pads underneath that leg that is, yeah, here it is. I got them. Yay. Okay. Resume share. Okay. So it was really interesting because this horse, she told me he had a very old injury in, I think it was a ligament injury in his foot, right? So I stacked a slant onto a hard pad.
Okay.
Okay. And I did that. And then I was just watching his chest. So here, if you look at his chest, this one, you see that even though he's on 2 to 3 inches of pad, his chest is actually quite level. Right? Look at how straight that sternal line is, right? And you also see how this leg is angling inward, and he stood with that leg base narrow, right? Here's where his foot should be, is like way out here.
Hanging way out to the side.
Yeah, right? So look at how much it goes to the inside. So let's see, I was just taking some, there you can really see it, right? And you can see how the shoulder line is so far past. Then I double stacked him. I placed two hard pads, put one on top of the other. And what's really interesting is he's not nearly so medial. Right now he went medial again. You can see again, it's close together. And actually that's 3 pads. Okay. So I watch this sternal line. And when I start doing multiple stacking, look at the height of the knees. Like the left knee is below the right knee.
Right.
But the chest is straight.
Yeah.
So we have moved, because there's no bony attachment of the front leg to the chest, we have literally moved this whole leg up.
Right. So you've lifted him all the way up through his scapula.
Yeah, the scapula is risen over the ribs.
Right.
And he was totally happy to stand here. Like, we can't make these horses do this. He was so happy to just hang out there. And again, you can see the chest hasn't changed. The leg has moved relative to the chest. And I triple stacked him. And he would look at his soft eye. Yeah. He was totally hanging there, was not swaying, so I could leave him there. He's experimenting with moving his head. His eye got super dreamy. And while I was doing this, I'm talking to the owner, and she started telling me how he had a shoulder injury years before the foot injury, which was interesting. Right here now we can see, wow, now the chest has moved a little bit. And we walked him off and came back and did it again. We didn't leave him there the whole time. But you see now the pecs are on this angled line. Okay, again, he's standing very medial. Oh, my cat. But this horse, she reported afterward, was so much better in that right front. So much better, because he moved really stabby. I thought I had video of him, but it doesn't appear here. And this is not, I'm going to pause my screen and find another example, because I just saw another one that I did that with as I scrolled through. And I don't want to scroll without pausing my screen because I'll make everybody really nauseous. Yeah, okay. So this one, I'm going to go back to this little quarter horse here. This was the before video. Okay, and you can see that she's kind of low right front, right? Really heavy right front. She rotates her rib cage to the right. The rider's saddle shifts off to the right. Everything's down on the right. The owner spent a lot of time with saddles trying to get the saddle right. And you can see, like, for her design, she's really on the forehand, and she should move so much better looking at her conformation.
Right.
Right. Okay, so now we're going to look, we're just going to go the other way for a second so we see both sides. And you can just, you know, if you were to count that, you can hear that heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, you know,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
labored, really, really labored. And look at that saddle shifted way off to the right. And the rider can't overcome that when that horse is rotating that rib cage that much, right? And the canter's just really just not going anywhere, right? Really on the forehand, really hollow, has to raise her head to counter the balance of the forehand, really rough down transitions, right? Okay, so started with one hard pad, right front. Okay, and again, you see this, the foot's medial to the shoulder, right? And she's not standing square with that foot under her shoulder. Okay. Then we took a picture of the print of her right front. We've seen this before, this really odd shaped, not even, quite tight and narrow on this side. Okay, there's a better example of it. Then I did left front, hard pad. So I'm just doing one foot at a time. Okay, also notice how the chest is different when I did this side.
Yeah.
Right? So let me go back and show you. Here's, oops. No, no, I know I have a picture of it. I guess not. Okay, but you can see this chest line, right? So she was heavy on the right front and putting a pad under her left front. Rib cage rotates. You can tell that by the sternal line being angled. So now she's really loading on that right front. Okay, little short video. Look at the pec muscles, right? And her head is over this leg. So she doesn't have her head in the middle.
Right.
Right? Still seeing that same pattern. Here's her left front, more symmetrical than her right front. There's the two. So now I've gone to one hard pad under each foot, and all I did was turn them over so I had a clean surface. The pads will return to flat in time, but they hadn't lost all their print at that point, so I just flipped them over so I had a nice clean slate.
Okay.
And I did both front feet, right? And so now, drop the sound out. Oh, no, come back here. No, I just want that one. Go back. Sound out, play. So you can see she's a little wider in the base, not all the way straight yet, but a little bit wider. And you watch, like, there's her sternal line angled, so we know her rib cage is rotated right. So we know there's more pressure on this leg. Oop, oh crap! Hang on. I can scrub it, which will be actually right there. She's low right.
Yeah.
Then she turns her head right. She comes even. Then she turns her head. Oops. Here we go. She's pretty even there, right? But her head is pretty much organized over the right front. Now she's turned her head left. Watch the chest again. So she's low right. When she brings her head middle, she's more square. But you see how much movement there is going on here? Look at the pec muscles, right?
Yeah. A lot of reorganizing going on. Right?
That's right. A lot of reorganizing. And now, and I should look at the time on this because just that, the prints are so much more square.
Yeah.
So much more even, right? So then I added slants behind. Okay. And she checked that out. We did some movement stuff. And now I came back and I said, okay, let's put two pads under your right front. We get licking and chewing. She experiments with her head. Look at the chest. Now it's the opposite, right? The sternal line is middle, but the pecs are opposite.
Right.
now she'd been moving a little bit, so we see some breathing changes, but look at how she's like checking out that shift. So her leg did not slide up her rib cage. We moved everything to the left.
Right.
Left.
Right. Yeah. Left. Super interesting.
Okay. So now I've double stacked her again, right? She turns her head and look, we get low left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Drops her neck, steps off, no problem, totally fine. Let's see, looking at the print, it's changed. Then I worked with the rider.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because in this case, she was still kind of stuck over to the right.
She was still riding the crooked horse.
Yep. And now we came back and did double hard. We're still with hard, right? Got all this yawning. And the front legs are much more straight under her instead of like go down a rock kind of look.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes it's great to give them a little bit of break and then come back and offer again. Like you can see, she just yawned like crazy. Now we're looking at the left.
Bit to me, almost like the Feldenkrais work, where I've heard.
Oh, it's so Feldenkrais, okay? Absolutely. Oh, let's look at this video here. Absolutely, it's Feldenkrais. That's the basis. That's where it comes from, is all my Feldenkrais training.
Yeah.
And it's the create an environment, offer an opportunity, allow for change, allow the horse to show you what they want. So many people have a hard time, pick up your foot, pick up your foot. It's like, I don't care if they pick up their foot. If they don't pick up their foot, that's just as much information as if they do, because some horses can't, right? Maybe I need to go and pick up the other foot. Let me just find a little bit of movement video. So that was at the very end when we were looking at, so this is after I worked with the rider a bit. I think she's going to ask for a canter there. But look at the difference in the canter, right? Like, is it perfect? No, but is it improved? Yes.
Right. She's picking up more through that thoracic sling.
Yep. And she struggled in the downs. We know the transitions are going to be tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that trot is so much more level in the neck and more reach.
Now we're going somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, in half an hour.
Wow. Wow, that's super interesting. And so you're seeing results like this with obviously lots of horses all over the world. How can people learn more about this? You said that you've got a lot of videos on your YouTube channel and on your Facebook.
So the YouTube channel, there's Murdoch Method has a lot of videos, and I've been starting up SureFoot Equine as a standalone YouTube channel, and there's videos there. There's videos on both. They can go to my Facebook page, SureFoot Equine. They can join Fans of SureFoot, and they can go to Murdoch Method and go to the tab SureFoot Equine. There's lots of information there, and all the products are in the store on Murdoch Method. So if anybody's interested.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Perfect. Well, Wendy, I know you and I could talk for hours and hours.
Yeah, and we are obviously. I'm going to run out of battery here, but
right. Exactly. I'm a little bit concerned about that. Exactly. We're closing in on almost 2, and we're good for that. We're good at that. This would not be the first time we've pushed that 2-hour mark. Well, thank you for sharing all this insight about the SureFoot and about your history and that sort of thing. That's super awesome. And I feel like we've given folks a lot to think about. We've answered some of the questions that have come in live and beforehand. So that's awesome. So if folks want to reach out to you after this with questions, should they do that through your Facebook page or?
No, just email me at wendy@wendymurdoch.com.
Perfect.
So if you email me, keep your questions relatively short. If it's too much gray matter, I kind of zone out. But the problem with Facebook is it disappears on me. Like there's so many different places that they put messages. So the best thing is email me at wendy@wendymurdoch.com, or you can email me through my website, murdochmethod.com.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, you know how I go as far as wrap up questions.
I always forget you asked these questions.
I love it. You're always surprised when we do these. I love it. Well, I've changed them just in case you were thinking.
I have a book.
Oh, perfect. Well, that one is still on here. So good. So let's just go for an actionable tip or thought for riders. What's something that they can ponder or work on today or while they're in quarantine?
Listen, like pause to listen. Whether that's just simply picking up your horse's foot, to pause for a moment and notice the quality of the leg when you pick it up, or to pause for a second before you ask the horse to do something else. Just put a little pause in there.
I love that. A little mindfulness practice coming into that. Just pause and listen. I love that. Very cool. So you said you have a book. So the question is, what's a recent book you've read or video you've watched?
It's called The Goal.
The Goal.
And The Goal, and it's about business. Okay. So my friend suggested this actually. I was like, okay. And I was driving to South Carolina, so I got it on audio, and it's really, I found it so fascinating and so appropriate, not only personally, but kind of like what's happening globally. And it talks about what's important, and then what do you need, and it's so weird because the words that they're using are things like throughput. And right now, currently with the pandemic, they're talking about throughput. How many tests can we put through?
Yes,
And what's the limiting factors? And if you have a limiting factor like a solvent or a solution or a swab, that limits how many tests you can do. And so this book is all about how to maximize throughput. And it was so weird to listen to this book, and as I'm driving, also listen to the news about what was happening. So, really, it's an old book, but it's really fascinating. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, cool. So that's one you recommend then?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. I think this goes back to a lot of your story, but I think this will be a great wrap-up question. What's something that the horse has given you?
A life.
I kind of knew you were going to say something like that. Yeah, a life for sure. I love it. No need for more than that. So this is a constant journey of discovery and improvement. What area of your horsemanship or self-development are you working on or wanting to improve currently?
Actually riding my horse. So
yeah, right.
So I was in quarantine, self-quarantine for 2 weeks. I didn't want to go to the barn because there's an older woman there, and now that's passed. And I've been going over, and he's so unfit because he hasn't been ridden in 2 years. So started with just basically kind of taking off the fur, finding the horse inside the fur, and getting him cleaned up the barn yesterday. And so just getting organized so I can start riding during this time.
Awesome. Perfect. Good. This one, I think you may remember this one. If you had a giant billboard advertisement for the whole world to see, what would be the message that you would put on it?
Oh, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. What would health is the ability to recover.
I love it. That's fantastic. I love it. Well, Wendy, again, it has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for joining me for this. And thanks for the tech support starting out.
No worries. And we'll do a little tutorial. Okay. I'll set up a little Zoom tutorial and walk you through some stuff.
Perfect. Lord knows I need it. And so does the rest of the world now too.
I'm on a learning curve. I'm just a little ahead of you. That's all.
There we go. Well, I love it. Well, thank you so much. And I'll go to our wrap up here, and we'll hang out for a moment if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, gang. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for episode number 42 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Wendy and I your ear. Please remember that if you've missed any of this, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, eventually through YouTube and iTunes, or by streaming directly from our website by accessing the Talking About Horses page from the education drop-down menu. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share with your friends. Be sure to tune in next time. Thanks, gang.
Bye.
Bye.
From outer space.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.
All right, where are we? I think I don't know if we've stopped sharing.
Nope.
How do we
You're
stop
still
sharing?
live on Facebook.
Oh no, we're still live. Here we go.
Go up and do you want to, let's see if I can't turn it off. You have to go up to live on Facebook and turn it off.
Oh, there we are. Okay, cool. See, more tech support.